911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Does a legend walk among us, lurking in the forests of our world?
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my sensor light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man or something. It looks like a man. I don't know what it was.
For over 15 years, we've talked with scientists, researchers, investigators, and witnesses, trying to gain insight and proof around the existence of this mysterious entity.
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sure.
Tia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's right...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
Join us as we continue into the investigation of the Sasquatch experience.
Oh, so the question has been asked. So what got you into Bigfoot? Well, I could answer that two different ways. Either take a seat and we'll spend some time and we'll go in depth to the answer to that question, or I can just give you the Cliff Notes. This opportunity, we might split it right down the middle. See, the whole thing with Bigfoot and Sasquatchery, or whatever term it is that you choose to identify this bipedal creature of mystery and obsession, only gets upheld by the overwhelming evidence that has been presented before all of us. And so, with that being said, I will go back to the beginning as to what may have transpired into my concern, my observation, and my compulsion to take such a deep-rooted interest in such a crazy subject. See, with me, I was just a kid when I was presented, unexpectedly, with the Patterson-Gimlin film, or as the alumni in this group would refer to it as the PG film. But I got to witness it shortly after it was released to the public. Now, granted, it was presented on the Svengoolie matinee on Saturday afternoon on television before cable. And of course they presented the Godzilla and Dracula and Wolfman and Frankenstein movies. And prior going to commercial, well, Svengoolie said, here's an interesting footage that was taken out of Northern California of a monster, possibly Bigfoot. Well, the first time I was made witness to that, I knew instantly, as a kid, wow, monsters do exist. I had no doubt what I saw was real. It far exceeded even Hollywood's presentation of monsters, but that's not what this argument is about. The point is, Patty has given us an image that has reflected in culture from t-shirts and coffee mugs and air fresheners and stickers, all in the same pose when Patty turned to look at the camera. It became an icon, and it still is an icon today. And if it was a hoax, well, that whole culture would not exist. Us as people don't want to live by a lie. We want to live by something that is quite possible. And I knew as a kid that this was very possible. And I was enthralled by the fact that, well, monsters are real. But I never took it any further than that. I just assumed one monster lived in Northern California, and that was the end of the story. Just stay away from that area because you don't want to confront a monster. So after that time period, it kind of went back into the recesses and was never really brought to the forefront. It was just something that I knew and, well, just dealt with and put it away. But it was years later that I came across a book in a public library called Cryptozoology A to Z by author Lauren Coleman, who was a self-renowned cryptozoologist. And I picked up the book and I breezed through it, and I saw handfuls of creatures in there that I never heard of before. And I was completely enthralled, saying, wait, there's other monsters. There's other monsters that actually live in the Midwest where I live. But the one creature that held the most prominence to that book was Bigfoot. Well, why? Because the evidence was so overwhelming of its existence. But when that publication came out, there was no way for us to see to the future as to what we could learn about the activity of such a creature. Documentations of wood knocks, documentation of tree structures, documentation of trackways through the snow that just end, or trackways in the snow that didn't end, that were just absurdly larger than human tracks. But, like I did once before, I stored it away and put it on the back burner. Only because life at that point, well, it had its own distractions. You're a young man or a woman, you're attending school, you're trying to develop what you're going to be doing with your life, and reality steps in the way. The fun fact of monsters and creatures certainly sat to the back burner. And now, moving up to the future of 1999, when we were all supposed to be partying with Prince, well, I was asked by my eldest brother to go camping for New Year's in the Lac de Flambeau National Forest, which sits right on the southern shores of Lake Superior. Well, I've never done winter camping, especially for New Year's before, because it's survivable. And get all your gear, and of course, my brother was very much into this activity of camping and survival and being self-sustained, and I have it too. I'm kind of interested in how to be able to provide for oneself in some strange situations. And so I agreed. We will do a camping trip for New Year's 1999, when Y2K was all over the papers and all over the television. This could be the end. Once the computers shut down, everything will shut down. Planes will crash. And of course, the media painted this horrifying picture of what Y2K is going to present to all of us. Well, little did we know, it amounted to absolutely nothing. But on that camp trip, we were 7 miles from any civilization whatsoever up in the Lac de Flambeau National Forest. And of course, there is First Nations reservations there. And seriously, there was no talk or thought of at that time of creatures in the woods other than things that we already knew about. And so we were self-guarded against that. But a couple of strange incidences did happen on that trip that I could not make sense of, only because I wasn't given any information at that time as to what it could possibly be. Things from wood knocks to loud thumping noises in the woods, and a basset hound that came barking from miles away through the woods, running out in front of us across a fire break, only to be chased by 8 or 9 deer. That doesn't happen. It's the other way around. So why was this dog running ahead of the pack of deer, and they all sprinted out right in front of us and gave us no attention whatsoever? We were in full camouflage, and we were pretty well armed. Well, a few things did happen. We heard noises, we heard strange things. We're in the middle of a fire break, and a pine cone traveled at us both in a horizontal direction with no trees over our head. We didn't know what to make of any of it. Certainly Sasquatch or Bigfoot wasn't even in the equation, because none of us, my brother or myself, being the none of us, knew anything to surmise the fact that, well, possibly that's what it was. I just figured, well, it had to have been a very large bear, and it quite possibly could have been a very large bear. We didn't see it. We had no idea what created the ruckus. It was just a very unusual event, and I left it at that. Now, I will say that the two of us did confront with each other on our hike back to our vehicle, 7 miles, that we both felt really uneasy at that time, and we were both on our guard. But neither one of us wanted to freak the other one out, so we really didn't talk much about it till we got back to the car and some time had passed. And of course we shrugged it off as it probably was a very large bear. And we'll leave it at that. And for further details on that story, I'm more than willing to share it. But that's not really the question at hand here. The question at hand here is, what got you into Bigfoot? My personal turning point was listening to Coast to Coast AM when it was still on the radio here in the Midwest, on late night radio. But I heard a really interesting, creepy Bigfoot story that was told on that show. And it went into depth for well over an hour. And it painted this horrifying picture of an encounter that just fascinated me to no end. Was it real? Was it not real? I don't know, but the story that was being told was horrific. And now I wanted to know a little bit more about, is it real or is it not real? So I looked and researched and find communities that are out there. Of course, with the development of social media and the internet, well, information was pretty much laid out at our feet, so to speak, in order to take as much information as you want. And of course, most of it you have to sift through to decipher, well, is it real or is it not real? Is this information real or is it not real? Because, of course, like anything else, there always has to be the attention grabbers that want a hoax and make something more of something that it's really not. So you have to be careful. Don't jump to conclusions. And so I didn't jump to conclusions. But in the interim of looking up for more information based on that story in which I heard on Coast to Coast AM, I wanted to know more. Well, the more I knew, the more hair-raising it became to find out that creatures are being seen, at least these bipedal creatures are being seen throughout the entire United States, throughout Africa, Asia, Europe. It was insanity. I had no idea. You mean to tell me that there's a bipedal creature that can live in Florida, There's a bipedal creature that has been witnessed and seen and evidence gathered in Pennsylvania and in Ohio and in Illinois and in Wisconsin and Minnesota, and the list goes on and on and on. I had no idea. Well, wait a minute. You mean to tell me I could look out my window at any given moment and quite possibly see an unidentified bipedal creature? Well, that's enough to wake anybody up. That's what grabbed me. That's what brought me into this whole community to begin with. There's a lot more here than what meets the eye. There's so much evidence that is being compiled. Why can we not just slam our fists on the table and say, hey, this thing exists? Well, because we don't have a body. Well, now the conspiracy kicks in. Well, the government has the body. The government knows all about it. Why wouldn't we know about it? Well, that's an interesting thing to take a look at. Why wouldn't we know about it if there is an agency that has discovered and has confirmed the existence of this creature? Could it quite possibly be that it shares such similar DNA to us that it could be categorized as human and therefore has to be given those civil rights, land rights? Does it all come back to money? Follow the money. Always follow the money. It controls everything, every aspect of our life. Well, that's very possible. Sometimes conspiracies seem bigger than life, but can actually just be a reality. And so, with all of this that has been thrown at me to look at and go, I really want to talk to people about this. So through social media, I jump in and I find such amazing people throughout the community that have been researching. They've been boots on the ground. They've been gathering this evidence. And I'm an outsider looking in going, what's my contribution to all of this? Well, I pondered upon that for quite some period of time and thought, what we need is an outside source of critical thinking. And to be quite honest, I'm not the only one that thought outside source of critical thinking. We have people in the field, Dr. Meldrum, who clearly, through a lot of skepticism, but cannot deny the evidence presented before him, and then just lays out, it is quite possible. There is no reason why it couldn't be real. And of course, it always comes back to that infamous statement, right? Well, you can't prove Bigfoot is real. Yeah, well, you can't prove it's not real. And that puts a balance on the scale that really gives it a nail into the coffin that, man, this is definitely worth looking into. So I continued being that critical thinker. Think about the science of it. Think about it from a big picture, not so zoomed in on the infighting of I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm right and you're wrong. We can all do without that. And the group here at Sasquatch Experience has certainly come to the forefront that, this isn't an infighting group. We all have our opinions, but we can't fight each other over those opinions. All we are doing is looking at it with amazement to say, wow, this is quite possible. I find this really interesting. What do you think could be the cause of this? Now, there's audio evidence. There's physical trace evidence. Well, we all know this. So, being attached to the Bigfoot community gives me a relief valve from the everyday. We all have hobbies. Everybody we know has an interest or hobby. It's not necessarily monsters. Some people are into race cars. Some people are into whittling. Some people are into audio and engineering and internet and building and creating something new. And without those people, our civilization would be a big bore. We're just a tiny aspect of it to keep it from being a big bore. But there's something in my soul that attached me to the Bigfoot community. Because I think we're all looking for something, but yet we still love the mystery of it. And of course, my question is, do I really want that mystery to come to an end? I think personally, that's the question that I'm not able to answer. So in conclusion, I want to extend a thank you to everybody in this community that has had conversations with me and has brought me in, as well as myself bringing others into this community. I love to talk to witnesses that have had an experience. It's not for me to judge whether that experience happened or not. It's my personal enjoyment to listen to these experiences and to empathize with them. Because, hey, none of us can say it didn't happen. We really can't. Some of it is very far-fetched, and we can be very skeptical of the very far-fetched. But it still sits in the realm of, it could have happened. So I want to thank everybody in this community, our listeners, and those that I share this show with, and those that just are newcomers into this field. Thank you all so very much for being part of something that, well, it's just a damn cool mystery.
You've been listening to Sasquatch Experience. Please rate and review wherever this podcast is consumed. To share your experience, visit us on Facebook or email us, squatchexperience@gmail.com. Keep on squatching.